Everybody remembers Isaiah Thomas's historic 2017 playoff run. Following a 29-point per game regular season, IT led the Celtics to the Eastern Conference Finals and had a 53-point performance shortly after he was seen crying in response to the tragic and sudden death of his sister. In short, Isaiah Thomas just had one of the best stories in the NBA. You couldn't even make this kind of stuff up. He was 5'9", the last pick of his draft class, had a somewhat slow start to his career and wasn't immediately a superstar, and had experienced lots of tragedy throughout his life. IT was the ultimate underdog story, but all the narratives that made him the NBA world's favorite star ended up being what killed him. But before we get into it, be sure to subscribe to the channel. You're not going to want to miss out on what we have coming up, so be sure to be one of the first to join the ride and witness the rise of this channel. And with that, let's hop straight into this. Everything came crashing and burning for Isaiah Thomas pretty much the instant after the historic Eastern Conference semifinal meetup between the Celtics and the Wizards had concluded. He would then play pretty poorly in the first 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cavaliers, before he would be ruled out for the rest of the series due to a hip injury that would turn out to be detrimental to his career. This guy was 5'9". He didn't have a lot going for him. He needs that speed and that balance. So taking that away from him was essentially taking everything that he had left. We all know what would come next. In the offseason of 2017, Danny Ainge pulled the ultimate backstab move and traded Thomas to Cleveland, the very team he just got injured fighting against, in return for Kyrie Irving. Maybe one of these days I will make a video about the long-term impact of this trade, since there were so many assets involved. So let me know in the comments if y'all would like a sequel to that Pau Gasol trade video I made around a week ago. This trade would be the beginning of the end for IT. Things didn't work out in Cleveland. He was shipped off to LA and was a decent bench scorer over there. Then he went to the Nuggets and their depth meant that he would literally never play. And then finally he secured a starting role with the Wizards in 2020 before they would trade him to the Clippers, who would waive him. The whole situation was a tragic mess at trying and failing to sustain a role in the league after a year in which he was an MVP candidate. So many teams gave him a shot, but nobody was truly committed. And that's when the narratives began to turn on him. Those NBA teams that had signed him in the past few years haven't played him that much, and most other teams have simply given up on even considering signing him. Even Danny Ainge, as unfortunate as it is to say, has given up on IT. That trade he pulled in 2017 was tough, but also just business. I can see why he got the hate that he did for it, but to then turn around and disrespect Thomas after doing something like that to him is the real crime here. For the love of God, dude, don't ignore questions about re-signing him. You shouldn't be the one that is salty in this situation. So to all my Celtics fans out there, I know everyone wants to see him back, but Isaiah Thomas just isn't coming back to your team. IT has been super positive about everything on his Twitter, keeping up the same mindset that we all know and love him for. I scrolled through months worth of tweets and I couldn't find a single negative one. I know the whole entertainment business kind of thrives off of negativity. That's how YouTube works. That's how people like Stephen A. Smith have a career. But if I'm being honest, I have nothing negative to say about Isaiah Thomas. Even still, when he's been struggling and people rightfully have their doubts, I can't help but support the man, especially his great mindset. Now, I do think that there were some validity to the claims that it was questionable if Thomas was still a legit NBA player while he was in Denver and Washington, but I also think a lot of people, including myself, quickly forgot that he was injured this entire time. Remember that hip injury he suffered back in 2017? He never addressed it. He never got the hip resurfacing surgery he needed, but after being unsigned for as long as he has been, he's had the time to finally recover. He got the surgery, and after it was all over, this is what he had to say about his new and improved self.
I was in a lot of pain each and every day. I couldn't lift my leg up. It was hard to put my sock on by myself. So, you know, battling that adversity during the same time trying to practice, work out, get better, play in NBA games against the best players in the world with basically one leg, one hip.
Look, nobody knows if these claims are legitimate or not. Even I doubt that he's as good as a player as he was in 2017, but it's also difficult to argue that finally fixing a hip injury that had been the cause of your entire falloff in the first place wouldn't at least positively affect your career. We can't really say anything about this because nobody will let him play. He's looked good playing in the FIBA AmeriCup this season, but the low level of competition does make it difficult to gauge if he'd thrive in the NBA. All I know is that there's not a lot of risk to at least giving him a shot. We don't know what he'll be like, so just give him a small contract, throw him in games from time to time, and just see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, you release him, and at least we can have a proper conclusion to the career of Isaiah Thomas, with no questions asked. There's no loss here to be had. If he sucks, you had him signed to a small contract in the first place, and if he's great, then great. Alright, enough stating the obvious. Obviously, if Thomas can average 12 and 4 on one leg as he did last season, the two-legged version of himself is at least an NBA player. But why? Why has nobody signed him? That right there is the million-dollar question. Here's the thing, once you're unsigned for a somewhat long period of time, it almost doesn't even matter how good you are. Since you haven't been able to prove yourself, people are given more freedom to just make things up. They really just don't know. And the worst part is that you can't even really prove yourself because you haven't been given a platform to prove yourself. You're unsigned, even you don't know if you are a legit NBA player anymore, and maybe you have those doubts as well. When the NBA gives up on you, you have to prove yourself all over again, regardless of who you are. Just look at a guy like Carmelo Anthony. He lost a full year of his career due to false narratives being spread by people who just didn't know. NBA teams see other NBA teams rejecting certain players and assume that they are doing so for a reason. That's how so many undrafted and late draft gems fall in the hands of Masai Ujiri. He doesn't follow the mob and is willing to give opportunities to people others are doubting if he thinks they deserve it. Ujiri is a free thinker. He doesn't get that influenced by outside forces, and that's what has made him so great. And the longer you've been out for, the more the narratives begin to take over. The amount of people that were calling Carmelo Anthony not even an NBA player now looks laughable, and that narrative grew more and more prevalent the longer he was unsigned. That's why I really hope that somebody gives Isaiah Thomas a chance as soon as possible, because with each and every day he remains unsigned, the less likely it becomes that he ever will be. It took Christian Wood 4 years to finally get a chance, and it turns out he's a star. Jeremy Lin was a consistent 13 to 18 point scorer for years, but once he wasn't immediately signed in last year's offseason, he still hasn't recovered in 1.25 years. We are still waiting on his return. David Lee was averaging 18 points per game in 2014. Then Draymond took over his starting spot, and immediately, even after he left Golden State, nobody was willing to give him a big role on their team, and he would be out of the league by 2017. These NBA teams are followers. They don't like breaking the mold, and usually they just follow the general consensus that everyone else is. And this simple fact screws over unsigned players like Isaiah Thomas. I'd like to finish this video off speaking directly to Danny Ainge, who I know is obviously watching this video. To you, Danny, I say, come on now. It seems like Jeff Teague is being paid off by Isaiah Thomas himself to play bad so that IT can eventually replace him. And at this point, do the Celtics have anything else to lose? My Julius Randle-led Knicks are on the verge of passing y'all in the playoffs. If anything, just sign him for my guy, Ask the Truth. He's been campaigning for IT for as long as I've known him. He's a good guy, dude. He did nothing wrong. Why are you doing this to him? Danny, all I hope is that you at least hear me out. I know you're watching this, so hey, while you're here, why don't you drop a sub? And with that, we conclude this video. What do you think about this idea that it's practically impossible to return to the league once you are out of it, regardless of talent, status, or skill? Is my theory accurate or not? Let me know in the comments below. Also, here's another thing I'd like to hear your thoughts on in the comments. What team could really use Isaiah Thomas's services? I know the Celtics are the obvious answer, so give me a few unique ideas. Please